Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the 10th episode of the story, in which Naruto sets out to discover his true reason for being Hokage. Look out, Ninja World! A new Naruto Uzumaki has arrived. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. Naruto stared at Mayu with a serious expression on his face. He had always been a curious person and always wanted to know what was going on or if there were any secrets of almost anything. This had annoyed the village back when he was young, since he wouldn't leave his victim alone until they spilled their guts. He had stopped pestering people as time passed, but his curiosity still remained, though it had lowered to a healthy curiosity. When Mayu had begun to make her accusations, Naruto knew to shut up, since he knew that whatever she was about to say was important, and the fact that he didn't really have another choice since he was tied to a chair with his chakra sealed. He watched as Mayu walked back to her throne-like chair, slumping into it with a sigh. Exhaustion could be seen in her eyes, proof that she had been through a lot in her days, and her seating position showed that she was simply tired of what, he did not know. Where to begin? Mayu wondered out loud. She ran a hand through her hair, with her eyes settling on the vast desert. Naruto noted the look of sadness that washed over her face as her eyes wandered the dunes of the desert. The kunoichi suddenly snapped her gaze at the blonde, getting his attention, before she sighed once more. "Are you going to tell me anything, or are you just going to sigh all day?" Naruto asked, a little irked at Mayu's attitude. Her lax nature reminded him somewhat of Shikamaru, which wasn't really a good thing. Mayu scoffed before shifting on her seat, her gaze on Naruto. "I guess I should begin with the village's history." She crossed her arms and sighed once more. Naruto's eye twitched in annoyance. Whirlpool was always a peaceful village. We didn't seek out trouble and avoided confrontation with any village. Conflict, however, was unavoidable. Whirlpool was home to many seal masters. Every single ninja knew the basics of sealing. This, mixed with our large chakra capacities, caught the attention of other villages. Mayu stood from her seat and walked over to one of the large windows on the room, looking longingly at the sky. Because of our talent, other villages viewed us as threats and attempted to attack us several times. All of those attacks were easily countered by our ninja, but tension between our village and others began to rise. We still remained peaceful and things looked peaceful, until she trailed off, her eyes filled with sadness and regret. Naruto simply kept listening, knowing that it wasn't a good time to intrude. The Third World Shinobi War began. At the time, Konoha was in trouble. Their rations were low and many of their forces were dying on the field. They requested the aid of Whirlpool. After much negotiation, Whirlpool finally agreed to help out Konoha and became involved in the war. We gave supplies to the Leaf and sent some of our shinobi to help out in battles. At the time, I was young, a fresh genin, and was told by my master that ninja nations should help each other out. I was against the idea, but nobody really listened to me. Naruto watched as Mayu's expression grew sour, her eyes reflecting the resentment she held. The kunoichi turned to the chunin and frowned. Since we aided Konoha, other villages saw the opportunity to attack us. At first they were no trouble, but when they attacked us at the same time, Whirlpool stood no chance. We were forced to seek help, but our ally villages refused to help. Suna was the first to deny us help, and we soon ran out of options. In the end, we asked, no, begged. We begged Konoha for help, the same help we gave them. And what did they say? Her eyes filled with unshed tears, she gritted her teeth and clenched her fists. They said no. Just like that, they denied us help. The only reason we were attacked was because of them, and then they just abandoned us as if we never helped them. I watched family, friends, teachers, I watched them all day when I was just a genin. Innocent people were slaughtered before my eyes just because Konoha refused to help. That's why I seek revenge against them. I'll destroy the damned villages that abandoned us." The room fell into silence. Naruto's blue eyes followed Mayu as she walked towards him. He understood why she sought revenge. If he was honest, he would probably have done the same thing in the past. She was right at being angry with Konoha. In fact, he couldn't believe what they had done. For the first time in his life, he saw Konoha as unfair and flawed. I want you to join me, Mayu's voice snapped Naruto out of his thoughts, eyes widening at the request. She stood in front of the Chunin with a tired look on her face. Avenging Whirlpool will be hard by myself and I'll need all the help I can get. I don't care where I get it. You're an Uzumaki like myself. Do what's right and avenge your people. Naruto's eyes narrowed on the kunoichi. No, he responded with a frown, taking Mayu by surprise. A growl escaped his lips, and he glared at the Whirlpool survivor. I don't approve of what the Hidden Leaf did, but it's the home of my friends, and as long as they are Konoha shinobi, then I will always side with the village. I swore to protect those important to me. Attacking Konoha would be betraying my friends, and I will never do that. I see you're being stubborn, Mayu snarled, walking past Naruto's chair. She was out of view, but her footsteps echoed throughout the room. You will see things my way soon enough. The Chunin heard the sound of her footsteps die down and sighed. He had to find a way out. He had to stop her before she took more lives. He knew that he didn't stand a chance against her, but with his team at his side, then they stood a chance, though it was small. Mayu, or Red Death, was far above Genin or Chunin level. If they wanted to win, then they would need to know how Mayu fought, using seals. Naruto suddenly smirked, noticing his ninja sandals were still on. Looks like I'll be out of here sooner than I thought. He quickly kicked his sandals off, keeping an ear out for any sign of Mayu. I'll have to be quick about this. Back in Suna, one of the council women stood on the rooftop of the Kazekage's office building. She looked at the village with a tired look on her face. She always valued the village and did everything on her power to ensure that it gained prosperity. Knowing what the council was doing made her feel powerless. She couldn't do anything against their decisions. It was stupid to betray Konoha a second time, since they would investigate the death of their ninja. Starting conflict would only result in lost lives and the eventual destruction of the village. A smirk formed on her face. She was no usual elder, and she would show it. She was Chiyo, a shinobi that had seen many things on her day. She knew that it was easy for ninjas to know when someone had been targeted and killed. She would do what was necessary to stop the council. The council didn't have any knowledge of how the ninja world worked and how to improve a hidden village. She would need to kick those people out of there and appoint those that had such knowledge. The first step would be to gather those that are knowledgeable on the ninja world, those that had first-hand experience and knew to spot trouble right away. Then they would need to gather supporters and finally appoint a new Kazekage. This wouldn't happen overnight. In fact, she guessed that it would take a minimum of 2 years before they would finally rid themselves of the old council. Chiyo was a patient person. Getting rid of the council would take time, but she knew that it would eventually happen. She only hoped that the Konoha ninja didn't get killed on their mission, for that would only put her plans on jeopardy. Naruto held a small blade on his mouth, his ninja sandals near his feet. The Chunin always kept a small blade on his sandals if he was ever captured on a mission. He had never had any use of it until now. With the blade on his mouth, he looked down at the seal running across his torso. It was a standard chakra suppression seal with no real complexity. It seemed Mayu had taken it easy with the sealing. The Chunin's eyes focused on the seal before glimmering with glee. He had found the main seal. On his training with Jiraiya, the sage had taught him the basics of sealing. Chakra suppression seals were one of the basic forms of sealing due to how straightforward they were. The seals were composed of many smaller types of seals, with one being the strongest. If one was to take off the strongest seal, then the whole thing would easily break with a little force. Naruto used the blade to cut on area right below his heart, grimacing as he did so. A small trail of blood ran down his torso as he disrupted the main seal. He gritted his teeth as he continued to cut part of his flesh, wondering when the seal would weaken. There was a sudden pull on his body before he felt a small portion of his chakra return. The Chunin dropped the blade and tapped into his chakra, growling at the burning feeling of the seal against his flesh. By the looks of things, Mayu had used one of the burning chakra suppression seals Jiraiya had been talking about. This seals would burn hotter and hotter each time the person tried to use chakra. Come on. Naruto gritted his teeth as blue chakra flared around him, the seal burning hotter on his flesh. The markings around his torso began to waver and shrink in size. With one final struggle, the seal finally came off, leaving the Chunin panting on the chair. Naruto chuckled as he rested against the chair. He had managed to take off the seal. He looked down at his torso to see it colored a burning red, no doubt the seal's work. He knew that it would eventually heal, as always, and focused on the ropes on his hands. Gathering wind chakra around his hands, he began to manipulate it. Hearing the sound of light tearing, he smirked, focusing on the wind chakra cutting the rope. The Chunin winced, feeling the wind chakra cut into his wrists due to his control not being that good yet. He began to pull his hands away as he gathered more wind chakra until they suddenly snapped apart, making him jump slightly on the chair. "I have no time to lose," he muttered as he put his ninja sandals back on. Turning around, he found that his shirt and scrolls had been put on the corner of the room. He quickly put on his white shirt and pocketed the scrolls. Without thinking twice, the Chunin jumped out of the building's window and landed safely on the sand. Sighing in relief, he turned around with his eyes widening at the sight before him. There was nothing but sand where he used to be, not even a rock or any kind of evidence that showed there had been a building there. "What is this?" he wondered as he extended his right hand, gasping when feeling the rough surface of the building against his hand. A small blue glow surrounded his hand as he touched the building. How did she make a whole building invisible? Is it a kind of genjutsu or another kind of seal? Naruto frowned and turned on his heel before breaking into a run. He didn't have time to wonder how the building worked. He needed to get away from Red Death. He didn't want to risk being captured again and knew that if he did, then she wouldn't be as forgiving as before. What he needed to do was reunite with his team and find a way to stop her. The blonde reached into his pants pocket and took out a scroll. He poured some chakra onto it and his headband appeared before him. A smile formed on his lips as he remembered how he had gotten it. It was a reminder that he had important people he needed to protect. Tying it around his forehead, Naruto made a few clones, all of them running next to him. "Scatter and leave a trail," he ordered as the clones ran in opposite directions. He was sure that Mayu would be preoccupied following their tracks and give him more time to prepare. Naruto's headband shone on the desert as he continued to run with a frown on his face. He hoped that round 3 would go to his team. Sasuke, Gaara, and Kankuro walked through the desert, none of them talking. The puppet user was a little freaked out by the odd auras that surrounded his two teammates, but he didn't voice it, choosing to keep his eyes on the horizon instead. The one-tailed Jinchuriki kept his eyes focused on the surrounding area, looking for any kind of movement that would give them a hint as to where Red Death had gone. Sasuke kept a hand over his kunai holster as he walked. He felt as if they were being watched and could have sworn to have seen something earlier. They hadn't heard or seen the mercenary the Sand Ninja were talking about back at the village, but being prepared wouldn't hurt. He would be the one to kill him. He needed to test his strength, and a mercenary would be the perfect opponent. "Stop," Gaara ordered as he came to a halt, his eyes focused on the desert. Kankuro turned to Gaara with a confused look while Sasuke scoffed with his arms crossed. Not long after, the outline of a person could be seen in the distance. "Who's that?" Kankuro wondered as he narrowed his eyes on the figure. Sasuke focused on the figure before breaking into a smirk. "It's just Naruto. I knew the idiot wouldn't get himself killed." His eyes caught the sigh of movement once more, making him turn to his right rather sharply, alerting the other ninja. "It's nothing," he muttered when he saw the two Sand Ninja look at him oddly. "Let's just get the idiot back for now." Gaara nodded as he broke into a run towards the Chunin, the other two following behind him, Sasuke keeping an eye out for the mercenary. Ino walked heavy steps through the streets of Konoha. She held a tired expression on her face and her clothes looked like they had seen better days. She would need to wash them as soon as she got home. Tsunade hadn't been light on the rest of the training and she could feel her body begin to ache from the rigorous training she had gone through. She hoped to get a warm bath as soon as possible. Not many people walked around the village, but she guessed it was because it would get dark in a few hours. She turned a corner and her eyes filled with recognition. Sakura walked a little ahead of her with a slight bounce on her step. It was rare for Sakura to show that level of happiness, and the blonde Kunoichi couldn't resist her curiosity. Ino was never one to be left out of gossip and picked up her pace, hoping to catch up to the pink-haired ninja. "Hey Forehead, how have you been?" Ino greeted, the nickname a habit rather than an insult. Sakura turned to Ino with a frown on her face. "What do you want here, Ino Pig?" She sighed out in annoyance before she realized the condition Ino was in. "What happened to you?" Ino found herself laughing a little nervously, remembering the torture she now had to endure almost daily. "I was out training," she explained, "but that doesn't matter now. I want to know what's got you so happy." Sakura suddenly had a smug look on her face, a competitive glint on her eyes. "When I was walking around the market, I heard someone say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach." She pointed at herself with an exited smile on her face. "I'm going to make something for Sasuke and give it to him when he comes back from his mission." Ino suddenly broke into a fit of laughter, tears welling up on her eyes. "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard," she gasped out as she laughed. Sakura fumed and clenched her fists, a bright blush on her face. "Come on, Forehead, you can't be that naive." "What are you talking about?" Sakura growled. Ino smiled. "You don't have to cook anything for anyone. If they like you, then they like you," she explained. "You just have to spend time together and things just fall into place. Sure, you have to do some work, but don't go out of your way. It'll work out eventually." "You don't even know about that, Ino," the pink-haired ninja accused with a frown on her face. "It doesn't work like that." "Of course it does," Ino countered with a light blush on her cheeks, remembering how she and Naruto had admitted their feelings and the days they had spent together. Maybe it really didn't work that way for everyone, but she shrugged it off. "That's how it worked for me and Naruto anyway." "Wait," Sakura muttered with wide eyes, her whole body frozen in shock and a perturbed look on her face. Ino watched the other ninja with a frown, not thinking it was that much of a shock. "You and Naruto? Blonde, goofy, and loud Naruto?" "Yes, why?" Ino asked a little harshly, making Sakura gulp and wave her hands defensively. "In nothing, I was just wondering," she admitted with a nervous laugh. Ino huffed and began to walk away. Sakura trailed behind her with a guilty look on her face. "Come on, Ino, I was just really surprised. I never expected you and Naruto to be together." Ino's face softened and she stopped walking, turning to Sakura with a small smile. "It's okay, Forehead, I guess it's pretty strange that we ended up together," she admitted with a tender look on her eyes, "but I've never been happier." "Really?" Sakura asked incredulously. "Yeah," the blonde said with a nod. "There's something about him that makes you feel special, like you're the only person in the world. I was mean to him back when we were kids, but he still looked past that and treats me really well." Sakura found herself smiling. She was happy that Ino was happy and with Naruto nonetheless. "You're sounding pretty corny, Ino Pig," she teased, making the blonde glare. "Anyway, I'm happy for you guys. Naruto's not that bad and I have one less person to worry about with Sasuke." Ino chuckled and shook her head. A yawn escaped her lips as she turned to walk away. "I'm going home," she announced with a tired expression. "I've had a long day." "It was nice to talk to you, Sakura." Sakura watched Ino leave with a smile, feeling the friendship they had broken long ago began to heal. It would be nice to have her as a friend again. "I'll see you later, Ino," she called out as she made her way home. Naruto ran through the desert with no particular thought in mind. His clones had dispelled in unknown ways, and it could only mean two things: that someone really hated clones, or that Red Death had noticed his absence and took chase. He really hoped it wasn't the latter of the two. Running from Red Death would result on his capture. He knew that he should meet with his friends, but he had no idea just how he was going to make it. It would be a matter of time before he was found, and his invisibility jutsu wouldn't work since Red Death would be on the alert. "Come on, Naruto," he urged himself. "Remember what Jiraiya-sensei taught you." "Remember well, Naruto," Jiraiya's voice echoed on his head. "Whenever a lady says no, it means yes." Naruto shook his head violently. "No, not that. You'll never guess Tsunade's bra size." "Come on, take a guess." "Useless pervert," Naruto exclaimed as he continued to run, giving up on his master for now. His breath hitched when a wall of sand appeared right before him without any warning. Not able to stop his run, the blonde crashed face first onto the wall with his head breaking through it, getting stuck in a rather comical way. "Are you serious?" he growled as he tried to pull his head away from the sand. "Someone get me out of here." "Very well," Gaara's monotone voice stated. The wall of sand dispersed, enabling the blonde to move once more. Naruto let out a sigh of relief as he turned to see the sand ninja accompanied by Sasuke and Kankuro. "We came looking for you, but it appears you're not in danger." Naruto nodded, nursing his neck with right hand. "I managed to break out, but I'm sure Red Death is after me." He gave his teammates a nod of acknowledgement before making a few clones. "I'll leave this guys here to leave fake trails. They bought me some time before. We have to get out of here as soon as possible and come up with a better plan." "Then let's get out of here already," Kankuro urged. "Where are Shikamaru and the other girl?" the Chunin asked in confusion. Kankuro sighed. "Don't let her catch you calling her that." He stretched his arms in a tired manner. "She and that Shikamaru guy are laying traps for Red Death." "Then you guys lead. We have to regroup," Naruto ordered, receiving nods from his teammates. The two clones ran in opposite directions, and the group of shinobi ran through the sand, hoping not to run into trouble. Shikamaru looked over his work with a careful eye. He and Temari had set up traps around the area, using the sand to cover them up. The lazy Chunin had taken a liking to Naruto's explosive tags since they were detonated with a simple hand seal. He wondered if he could also learn sealing, but decided against it. It would be too much work. The traps were set up to make a large circle. He would trigger them when Red Death was inside of the circle. The explosions would create a large cloud of sand that would shield everything from view, hiding the many tags inside of the circle. Those tags were Naruto's strongest explosives. Since those explosive tags took longer to activate, a diversion was needed. It was a well enough plan, but it would need precise timing and for the team to actually know where the traps were. "Someone's coming," Temari muttered, reaching for her fan. Shikamaru turned to his right to see four shadows approaching them. He held up a hand, motioning her to wait. "What?" Shikamaru sighed. "We can't attack just yet," he ordered with narrowed eyes. "There's the possibility that they're allies." "Fine, but if we die it will be your fault," she muttered with a frown. As the figures got closer, the distinct color of Gaara's hair gave them away. Shikamaru sighed in relief while Temari got a smile on her face, happy to know that Naruto was okay. The shadow user threw Temari a confused glance. It seemed she had grown rather fond of Naruto. He thought of telling her that Naruto had a girlfriend, a violent one at that, but he didn't want to get in the middle of things, so he shrugged it off. "Nice to see you're all right," Shikamaru stated with a small grin on his face. Naruto grinned and pointed a finger at himself. "You didn't think I'd let myself get caught so easily, did you?" he joked with a chuckle. He looked around the area and raised a brow. "Did you guys set up the traps?" "Of course," Temari responded with a proud look on her face. "I guess we hid them pretty well." "You really did. Good job, guys," he congratulated with a smile. Temari found herself blushing lightly and turned away from the group with her gaze on the sand. "So, what now?" Kankuro asked. Sasuke scowled. "We should just fight Red Death and lead him to the trap," he suggested with his hands on his pockets. "That way we'll get rid of him easily." "No, Red Death won't go down that easily," Naruto muttered with a frown on his face. The group threw him odd looks, wanting to know what he meant. "I was able to figure out how Red Death fights, and a trap won't be enough." "Then what do you propose we do?" Shikamaru asked in a serious expression. Naruto crossed his arms before closing his eyes in deep thought. "I guess I might be able to come up with something," he muttered more to himself than to anyone. He opened his eyes and gave the group a confident group. "Yeah, I think I can come up with something. Red Death fights by using seals. All we have to do is counter them and Red Death will be vulnerable." "How will you do that?" Gaara asked in a monotone voice. "Back when I trained with Jiraiya-sensei, he taught me some of the seals he knows," Naruto explained. "It takes me a few hours, but I'll be able to make the one we need." "Sounds like a plan," Shikamaru decided. The group stood in front of him with a confident spark on their eyes. The lazy Chunin nodded at them with the same confidence on his eyes. We'll take Red Death down tonight. The desert was cold as Gaara and Kankuro walked through it. Gone was the light of day, replaced by the darkness of night. The two ninja kept their eyes open for any sign of their opponent. The moon shone down on the desert, giving the sand a dim silver glow. The group had broken into different teams that served a different purpose. Gaara and Kankuro had been chosen to face Red Death directly and were walking through the desert in hopes of running into the ninja. As if invoking Red Death, sand suddenly shot up around them, blocking their view. Gaara frowned and dispersed the sand without much trouble. Kankuro quickly took out his puppet as his eyes darted around the area, trying to find the ninja. Kankuro, Gaara called in a low voice. The puppet user turned to his brother with a confused expression, "Jump away." As soon as the simple command left the Jinchuriki's lips, the two leapt away, just as a powerful shot of air struck the place where they had just stood and kicked up a small cloud of sand. "Good job," came Red Death's voice. The sand cleared to show the familiar form of Red Death, scythe twirling on her right hand. "Not many can dodge my attacks, but then again I wasn't planning on hitting you." Gaara simply stared at his opponent and prepared to attack, his brother next to him with his puppet ready to move. Naruto and Sasuke watched the ninja from a safe distance. The two Team 7 members were to enter the fight when they saw fit. Getting a surprise attack on Red Death would be crucial for their plan, and they had to time it just right. Sasuke suddenly broke into a run, making Naruto gasp in surprise. The Uchiha took a kunai in hand, wanting to finish the fight as soon as possible. His eyes widened when Naruto suddenly appeared before him with a frown on his face. "What are you doing, Naruto?" Sasuke growled with a glare. Naruto's eyes narrowed on his teammate. "We can't interfere just yet. If we go in there now, then the plan will go to waste," he explained. "Let's just wait a few more minutes." "We don't have a few more minutes," he argued with his glare still on place. "If everything goes according to plan, we won't get to truly test ourselves. Do you want that, Naruto?" Naruto clenched his fists. "Look, Sasuke. I don't remember anyone asking for your opinion, so just listen," the Chunin countered. "It's not about testing ourselves, it's about taking down Red Death. You can't order us around, so learn your place on this mission, Genin." Sasuke glared as the Chunin approached him, with his eyes narrowed. "I am not beneath you, loser," the Uchiha growled in his head. "I'll show you where I stand." Naruto shot him one last look before beginning to move past him. Everything happened in a flash. Naruto suddenly got the wind knocked out of him by Sasuke's punch before the Uchiha kicked him away. The blonde landed on the sand, rolling with the punch and getting on his feet, creating a clone as soon as he got back up. The clone took hold of Naruto's arms before launching him at Sasuke. The Uchiha could do nothing but watch as the Chunin's right fist met his face rather painfully. Blood escaped Sasuke's mouth as he jumped away from the blonde. He nursed his jaw, glaring at Naruto with his left fist clenched. The two glared at each other and slipped into their taijutsu stances. The Uchiha saw this as an opportunity to put Naruto on his place, while the blonde knew that Sasuke wouldn't stop without a fight. With the sound on an explosion in the distance, the two ran at each other. Their plan put on great jeopardy. Shikamaru watched Red Death fight his teammates in the distance, Temari standing next to him with a frown on her face. The lazy Chunin was growing agitated. There was no sign of Naruto or Sasuke entering the fight. He guessed that they would have intervened by now, but there was no sign of them. "Where the hell are they?" Temari growled with worry on her eyes. Shikamaru sighed. "Don't worry much about it." The two ninjas suddenly jumped away from where they stood, dodging a set of kunai in the process. The two turned around to see a man with long black hair, a goatee on his face, wearing samurai-like armor. "I don't get why you ninjas use tools like this," the mercenary began, twirling a kunai on his left hand. "They're easy to dodge and you can tell when they're coming. You ninja aren't that stealthy, are you?" Shikamaru steadied the man, wondering why he was after them. Meanwhile, Temari took out her fan and gripped it tightly on her hands. "Why are you here anyway?" The lazy Chunin asked with a frown on his face. By the way you talk and dress yourself, I'd say you're a mercenary. The man smirked. Not bad, kid. You're sharper than you look, but the mercenary reached for his back and pulled out a sword, pointing it at the two ninja, but it won't save you. I won't show mercy just because you're kids. The two ninja readied themselves to fight, their eyes focused on the mercenary. They hadn't counted on being attacked right when they were facing Red Death. Things just got a lot more complicated, and they hoped that they would be able to come out on top. Shikamaru watched Red Death fight his teammates in the distance, Temari standing next to him with a frown on her face. The lazy Chunin was growing agitated. There was no sign of Naruto or Sasuke entering the fight. He guessed that they would have intervened by now, but there was no sign of them. Where the hell are they? Temari growled with worry on her eyes. Shikamaru sighed. Don't worry much about it. The two ninjas suddenly jumped away from where they stood, dodging a set of kunai in the process. The two turned around to see a man with long black hair, a goatee on his face, wearing samurai-like armor. I don't get why you ninjas use tools like this, the mercenary began, twirling a kunai on his left hand. They're easy to dodge and you can tell when they're coming. You ninja aren't that stealthy, are you? Shikamaru steadied the man, wondering why he was after them. Meanwhile, Temari took out her fan and gripped it tightly on her hands. Why are you here anyway? The lazy Chunin asked with a frown on his face. By the way you talk and dress yourself, I'd say you're a mercenary. The man smirked. Not bad, kid. You're sharper than you look, but the mercenary reached for his back and pulled out a sword, pointing it at the two ninja, but it won't save you. I won't show mercy just because you're kids. Shikamaru studied the man with a careful eye. He held the sword with two hands in front of his body. It looked like a pretty standard and relaxed stance, but the Chunin knew better. The mercenary clearly knew what he was doing and wouldn't let himself open without a reason, unless he planned on tricking them. Temari, he muttered with his gaze on the mercenary. The blonde sand ninja turned to the shadow user with a frown. Don't attack him head on, he's expecting that. Temari's frown deepened. Then what am I supposed to do? She muttered back. We can't just stand here or he'll find an opening. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed as he watched the mercenary shift his feet. He was about to attack. It'll be a pain, but I'll create an opening. He turned to the sand ninja and gave her a firm nod. Make sure to get him or else my work will go to waste, and that would suck. The mercenary watched the two ninja talk amongst themselves with a smirk on his face. He found it amusing to watch since they thought that they could actually beat him. Traveling the world had made him strong, and he would show it to them. A sudden explosion rocked the area. The mercenary frowned while the two ninjas turned to look at a large cloud of smoke in worry. His eyes narrowed. He didn't have much time. If he was to do his job, then he would need to kill the ninja when they were alone. Taking more than two opponents, ninja nonetheless, would only make things difficult. His eyes scanned the ninja and found them to be slightly distracted. An opening. Not waiting another second, he charged at the two ninja with his sword on his side. The black-haired ninja quickly faced him and threw a couple of shuriken. The man scoffed and swung his sword, sending the incoming projectiles away. Shikamaru threw more shuriken at the man. He watched as the mercenary prepared to knock them away, making him smirk. Next to him, Temari swung her fan and created a stream of wind that changed the speed of the shuriken. Damn it, the mercenary growled as he was forced to throw himself on the ground, effectively dodging the projectiles. He jumped back to his feet. Just in time to dodge a kunai, he glared at his opponents but heard the distinct sound of burning paper. With wide eyes he looked down to see the kunai bearing an explosive tag on its handle. Shit. The mercenaries jumped away from the area but not fast enough to avoid the impact. The man was blown away before landing hard on the sand, kicking up a small cloud of sand. He quickly rose to his feet and swung the sword horizontally, earning a loud clang. In front of him stood Temari with her fan interlocked with his sword. She had used the sand cloud as a diversion while she attacked head-on, a wise move in the mercenary's opinion. The man smirked. Temari used both hands to hold her fan and that left her wide open. The sand ninja's eyes widened before a grunt escaped her lips. The man had used his other hand to punch the kunoichi on her stomach. Her grip on the fan loosened, giving the man one more opening. He applied more pressure on the intertwined weapons and managed to knock the fan away. Temari was left wide open with no source of defense. The mercenary lifted his sword before bringing it down on the kunoichi with a smirk on his face. This would be his first kill of the day. "What the?" he exclaimed when the sword stopped only centimeters away from the girl's skull. His eyes darted around the area to the leaf chunin holding his hands on a hand sign with a large shadow stretching from his feet towards him. "My turn," Temari muttered before kicking the man in the stomach as hard as she could. The man emitted a low grunt before being launched away from the girl by a hard chakra-enhanced punch. He crashed against the sand with a cry of pain, kicking up a small cloud of sand. "You idiot!" Shikamaru exclaimed with a little sweat on his forehead. He glared at Temari with his arms on his sides. "You weren't supposed to hit him. I already had him under my jutsu. Now we have to get him again." Temari scowled and held her fan to the side with a cocky grin. "Then we just do it again," she responded. She watched as the mercenary stood back up a little shakily. "I have a feeling it won't be too hard anyway." The mercenary glared at the two ninja. They were a lot stronger than he originally thought. It wasn't always that he was left in this state, but then again, his encounters with ninja weren't many. If he wanted to kill them, then he would need to get serious and use all of his abilities. "Let's see if you can handle this," the mercenary began as he took of his shin and arm guards. The accessories hit against the sand loudly and making small craters. The man stretched his arms with a loud sigh, throwing a confident smirk at the two ninja. "You're dead." Red Death smirked under her mask. A shot of sand moved towards her, but she easily jumped over it. By the look of concentration on the red-headed kid, his sand was still in pursuit, though it wouldn't catch her. Turning her head to the side, she saw the sand still chasing after her. Much to her amusement, such attacks wouldn't be able to even scratch her. She dropped to the ground and swung her scythe, creating a powerful blast of wind that struck the sand, dispersing it on contact and leaving nothing but a light breeze. Red Death stared blankly at the two ninja, wanting to see what else they had up their sleeves. If there was one thing that she enjoyed, it was testing her opponents. Not one person in the world had the same abilities, and it was always fun to see how different everyone was. Controlling sand was rare, and she wanted to see more of it, unlike the other kid who controlled puppets since they were common on the Sand Village. Red Death twirled the scythe on her right hand, creating a light breeze. She wanted to show that she wasn't serious on this fight. Maybe then they'll go all out, since it was clear that they weren't using their best abilities. Another shot of sand launched towards her, much to her disappointment. However, this time she merely brought the scythe down on the ground and created a wall of earth. The sand crashed against the wall before falling limply on the sand. "Fools," she muttered as she brought the wall down. Upon bringing it down, a puppet shot towards her with blades on its hands, making her utter a short gasp before jumping away. She landed on the sand without much trouble until the sand beneath her gave away. She tumbled down before walls of sand surrounded the area around her in a large orb. Interesting. Gaara concentrated on his attack. Controlling such a large amount of sand took a great toll on his chakra reserves, but it was a necessity when fighting someone so strong. "Sand coffin," he muttered as the walls of sand compressed on Red Death. "It's over." Kankuro found himself sighing in relief. That was good. Gaara, the puppet user, wondered why the attack didn't seem as intimidating as before. Back when his brother had isolated himself from everyone, the same attack would make him shudder in fear, but now it seemed natural, almost something artistic. "Did you think you had me?" A familiar voice came behind the two ninja. They quickly turned around to see Red Death standing before them with the scythe slung over her right shoulder. Kankuro was completely thrown off. Never before had someone escaped his brother's sand coffin. It seemed almost unnatural. He spared a glance at Gaara to see him snarl at the enemy ninja with something he had never seen on his brother's eyes before. The puppet user trembled slightly. It was rare for his brother to show how he felt, and seeing him act so, dare he say, afraid, showed that they were in a really bad situation. Red Death tightened the grip on her scythe before stabbing it into the ground, letting it stand there as she crossed her arms. I find you two to be a little interesting. Kankuro gritted his teeth while Gaara's eyes narrowed on her. That's why I'll play with you for a little while longer. I couldn't care less about puppets, but controlling sand with such precision is something I've never seen before. Be glad that I don't plan on killing you soon. So you're only using us to entertain yourself? Kankuro clenched his fists and threw her a glare. We're Shinobi of the sand. We are not to be taken lightly. Relax, brat. I also require some bait. Red Death responded calmly. I need you if I am to get Naruto back. Gaara's eye hardened on the ninja. What do you want with him? The puppet user looked at his brother with a look of confusion. The redhead appeared to be agitated and angry before he spoke once more. I suppose it doesn't matter. If you want something with him, then you'll have to answer to me. Well then. Red Death began as she took hold of her scythe once more. Lighting gathered around the blade as she began to twirl it on her hand. I guess I have to show you the gap between our powers sooner than I thought. Naruto and Sasuke watched the ninja from a safe distance. The two Team 7 members were to enter the fight when they saw fit. Getting a surprise attack on Red Death would be crucial for their plan, and they had to time it just right. Sasuke suddenly broke into a run, making Naruto gasp in surprise. The Uchiha took a kunai in hand, wanting to finish the fight as soon as possible. His eyes widened when Naruto suddenly appeared before him with a frown on his face. What are you doing, Naruto? Sasuke growled with a glare. Naruto's eyes narrowed on his teammate. We can't interfere just yet. If we go in there now, then the plan will go to waste, he explained. Let's just wait a few more minutes. We don't have a few more minutes, he argued with his glare still on place. If everything goes according to plan, we won't get to truly test ourselves. Do you want that, Naruto? Naruto clenched his fists. Look, Sasuke. I don't remember anyone asking for your opinion, so just listen, the Chunin countered. It's not about testing ourselves, it's about taking down Red Death. You can't order us around, so learn your place on this mission, Genin. Sasuke glared as the Chunin approached him, with his eyes narrowed. I'm not beneath you, loser, the Uchiha growled in his head. I'll show you where I stand. Naruto shot him one last look before beginning to move past him. Everything happened in a flash. Naruto suddenly got the wind knocked out of him by Sasuke's punch before the Uchiha kicked him away. The blonde landed on the sand, rolling with the punch and getting on his feet, creating a clone as soon as he got back up. The clone took hold of Naruto's arms before launching him at Sasuke. The Uchiha could do nothing but watch as the Chunin's right fist met his face rather painfully. Blood escaped Sasuke's mouth as he jumped away from the blonde. He nursed his jaw, glaring at Naruto with his left fist clenched. The two glared at each other and slipped into their taijutsu stances. The Uchiha saw this as an opportunity to put Naruto on his place, while the blonde knew that Sasuke wouldn't stop without a fight. With the sound on an explosion in the distance, the two ran at each other. Their plan put on great jeopardy. Sasuke quickly took out a kunai and flung it at the blonde. The Chunin raised his right hand and poured chakra onto it, summoning Asuma's blade and knocking the projectile away. He watched as Sasuke took out another kunai and brought it forward. He did the same, and the two met with a loud clang. Naruto glared at Sasuke, his teeth grinding in anger. Let's stop this before it gets out of hand, Sasuke, he suggested in a firm tone. Fighting his own comrade in the middle of a mission was out of the question. He wanted to avoid fighting the Uchiha at all costs. We can just forget this happened. Are you out of your mind? Sasuke countered in anger, his eyes burning into Naruto's. His eyes began to change into a deep red, 2 tomos on each eye. I'll prove that I am stronger than you. Sasuke's eyes burned in rage as he applied more pressure against the blonde, making him wince under the hold. Naruto was pushed back by the force of the hold. The Uchiha was clearly not going to hold back. If that was the case, then neither would he. Wind chakra poured onto the Chunin's blade, sharpening it and cutting into the kunai, much to Sasuke's shock. The blonde broke the kunai in 2 before kicking the Avenger on the stomach. The Uchiha doubled over in pain before receiving a hard kick to the face. His head snapped to the side, making him cry in pain as he fell on the sand. As he fell, he rolled with the momentum and stood back up with a hardened glare. The loser wouldn't beat him. "That's enough, Sasuke," Naruto pleaded in desperation. He didn't want to hurt his friend. It had been his promise not to allow any one of them to get hurt. Staring at one of his first friends willing to attack him was not something he had wanted under any circumstances. Sasuke closed his eyes and took a deep breath to pull himself together. "Nobody's going to stop our fight, don't you get it?" He opened his eyes and smirked. "This was always meant to happen, Naruto. You called me your rival once. Well then." The Uchiha ran through hand signs before putting a hand in front of his mouth. "Let's see if you have what it takes to be my rival." Fire shot out of Sasuke's mouth, shooting ferociously through the air. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he ran through hand signs and put a hand in front of his mouth. Wind shot out of his mouth and met with the fireball in a big explosion that shot sand everywhere. The sound of chirping suddenly pierced the area, small blue sparks breaking out of the sand. "It can't be!" Naruto screamed on his head before feeling something pierce his stomach. He looked down to see Sasuke's lighting-filled hand pulling out of his stomach. A surprised gasp escaped his lips before he burst in a cloud of smoke. A clone! Sasuke turned around, scanning the area for any sign of his teammate. When the hell did he have time to make a clone? There's no way he could have reacted so quickly. A sudden flare of chakra caught his attention. He quickly looked down before jumping away. He saw Naruto erupt from the sand with his left hand extended. The two ninja landed on the sand, both with light pants and focused expressions. By the looks of things, they were about equal when it came to power. It seemed that the fight would be decided by their stamina, which wasn't favorable to Sasuke. As much as he hated to admit it, Naruto would surely win if it came to stamina. Kakashi himself had once said that the dead last had had more chakra than most jonin. If he was to win, then he would need to kick it up a notch. Naruto stared at his friend in disbelief. He had just used the Chidori, possibly his strongest attack. He tried to kill me, his right hand clenched on his blade. He scanned the Uchiha and raised a brow when he saw black markings on the left side of his neck, the cursed seal. Flashback: the cursed seal. Naruto repeated with his head cocked to the side. Jiraiya rubbed the bridge of his nose. Yes, for the 100th time, Naruto, he sighed out, the cursed seal. It had been a normal morning for Naruto. The sun peeked out of his window, the sound of chirping birds graced his ears, and the smell of dirty laundry filled the area. He sat in bed with a tired expression on his face. He still felt a little tired. The meeting with the Hokage the previous night had been scheduled way too late, so late in fact that it had been around midnight when he made it home. "I have a mission today," he recalled as he stood up and walked out his room. Today he would be going to one of Sound's bases with Ino, Niji, and Choji. He inwardly smiled when he remembered the bet he had had with Ino. She would be mad when she saw him. "Good morning," came the cheery voice of Jiraiya as soon as the blonde stepped into his living room. "Good morning, Jiraiya-sensei," Naruto greeted with a nod as he moved to the kitchen. His eyes suddenly widened and he turned to the couch to see Jiraiya sitting there as if he owned the place. "What the hell are you doing here?" Jiraiya chuckled. It seemed that his new apprentice wasn't a morning person. "I heard you had a mission today, so I thought I would give you some last-minute advice," he stated with his arms crossed. The look of seriousness he held made the blonde keep quiet. "Since you're going to a Sound base, then you need to know about the cursed seal." "The cursed seal? What is that, Jiraiya-sensei?" Naruto asked with furrowed brows. Jiraiya crossed his arms and sighed loudly, closing his eyes in concentration before clearing his throat. "The cursed seal is one of the things that make Orochimaru dangerous." He frowned and pointed at his apprentice. "You actually have been close to one this whole time. That Uchiha teammate of you was given a curse. Sealed by Orochimaru." Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief. Why hasn't anyone told him yet? When did that happen? His fists clenched as a growl escaped his lips. "That Orochimaru bastard is going to pay for that. Don't even think about getting close to Orochimaru." Jiraiya snapped with a hardened look on his face. Naruto flinched under the tone of his master. He'd never heard him talk like that before. You're nowhere near his level, and believe me when I say that he can kill you before you get the chance to use a single jutsu. Last time he was only toying with you, but I can assure you that it won't happen again. Naruto looked down with a scowl on his face. If he couldn't fight Orochimaru, then he should think of a way to get rid of the seal. What does the cursed seal do? He turned to his master with a serious look on his face. Is there any way to get rid of it? The cursed seal is a seal made for the sole purpose of giving Orochimaru's ninja a power boost. By what I've seen so far, it also causes the person to slowly lose rational thought and become more violent. It could be a side effect, but, knowing Orochimaru, he probably made it that way. He explained, every time a person taps into their cursed seal, they lose more of themselves. The power that is gained comes directly from Orochimaru, meaning that they're able to gain even more if he sees fit. As of now, there is no way to get rid of the new versions of the seal, but I'm working on it. Naruto nodded, knowing that he could only trust in his master. Jiraiya chuckled and crossed his arms, throwing the blonde a cocky grin. Didn't you have a mission to go to? You're not going to become another Kakashi, are you? He teased. The Chunin's eyes widened before he ran back to his room, gathering all of his things. Gotta go, Jiraiya-sensei, he exclaimed as he jumped out the window, now fully clothed. Don't worry. I won't do anything stupid. Jiraiya chuckled and watched his apprentice leave. He had actually used shadow clones to help him get ready. It was pretty smart when he thought about it. End flashback. So that's it, huh? Naruto muttered with a sad smile on his face. His friend was being influenced by the cursed seal. There was no choice but to stop him before he lost himself to the power. Dark blue chakra swirled around the blonde, enveloping him in a comfortable warmth before a crimson red mixed with it, making his skin burn slightly. I have only used this once since I always used the watered-down version, but I can't let you use the cursed seal for too long. Sasuke smirked as the markings on his neck scattered all throughout his face, deep purple chakra flaring around him. You're no match for me, dead last. I'll show you. He dropped into his taijutsu stance, staring down at the blonde. Naruto's eyes turned a deeper shade of blue with black slits. There was no use for words. He had to end it all before it was too late. His friends were still fighting Mayu, and they needed his help. The chakra flared violently around him, his eyes glaring into Sasuke. Let's end this, Sasuke. Sweat trailed down Shikamaru's face. The mercenary had been wearing weights the whole time, and now that they were off, he was a lot more dangerous. The man was even close to Lee's speed. It made the Nara wonder why the world liked to give him too much trouble. He threw a glance at Temari to see her panting slightly. It seemed she was having trouble as well. The mercenary stood in front of the two with a smirk on his face. Not one to wait, he ran at the two with his sword on hand. He would end this before anyone else arrived. Temari saw him charge in and used her fan to throw a powerful wind at the man. He saw this and jumped high in the air before spinning in place and diving towards the two. Shikamaru threw a couple of kunai, but they were easily deflected by the man's sword. Follow me, the Nara muttered as he jumped away from the area. Temari jumped after the shadow user, knowing that he had some kind of plan. The lazy Chunin flipped in the air and threw a couple more kunai, but this time at the area where he had once stood. Damn it, the mercenary cursed when he saw two exploding tags waiting for him on the sand. As soon as he neared the sand, he stabbed his sword into it and, using it as leverage, he gripped the hilt before throwing himself away from the explosives. The kunais exploded in a large cloud of smoke, throwing sand throughout the area. What now? Temari suddenly asked with a frown on her face. This was only meant to be a diversion, Shikamaru explained. When I say so, I want you to use your wind chakra on the sand. I have a plan, so you need to keep him busy for as long as you can. Temari smirked. Leave it to me. She gripped her fan and swung it, creating a powerful gust of wind that cleared the sand. The mercenary stood before them with a frown on his face. Part of his attire was burnt off, as was part of his right arm. You damned brats will pay for this, the mercenary growled. Damn. Shikamaru muttered with a weary smile on his face. It had been a pain in the ass mission after all. He couldn't wait to get home and rest. This was way too much for a fresh chunin. How troublesome. Gaara kept his eyes narrowed as he focused on Red Death. Sparks of lighting were emitting from the blade of her scythe, and it seemed as if she was waiting for something in order to attack. Kankuro stood on his side with his puppet in front of him with two blades on hand, well aware of the fact that puppets wouldn't beat Red Death, but he had to do everything on his power to win. Red Death watched the two with a smirk under the gas mask she wore. They seemed to be overanalyzing everything, if their look of concentration was any clue, but it was futile. A sudden rise of demonic chakra got her attention. She snapped her head to the side to see the hints of a battle going on in the distance. Her eyes narrowed. Just what the hell was going on? Sand suddenly shot at the whirlpool ninja, picking up speed as it grew closer. More lighting gathered around Red Death's scythe before she swung it at the shot of sand, creating a few lightning bolts that shot out of the weapon. Her attack easily pierced through the sand before heading straight for Gaara. The Jinchuriki quickly jumped away before punching at Red Death. Much to her shock, his arm extended and managed to strike her stomach before she was thrown away by the power behind it. As soon as she fell on the sand, a puppet blocked her field of vision. It raised its two blades and brought them down on her. Shit, Mayu thought as she quickly slapped a hand to her shoulder and poured chakra into it. Kankuro's eyes widened when his puppet's attack was abruptly stopped by a kind of barrier forming around Red Death. What the hell at that? He muttered to himself with a frown. The whirlpool ninja quickly got to her feet and swung her scythe at the puppet, this time creating a raging fire around it. The attack tore through the puppet easily and left it in flames. Kankuro let go off the chakra strings and gritted his teeth. Damn it. Red Death turned to Kankuro with an annoyed look on her face. There was nothing special about this sand ninja, and he was beginning to annoy her with his presence. I'll kill you first, she stated as her form suddenly faded from view before reappearing behind the puppet user. Die. Before he knew what happened, the puppet user felt a piercing pain shooting through his back, leaving an agonizing pain on his upper body. Gaara watched with wide eyes as blood splattered out of Kankuro's wound before lifelessly falling to the ground. Kankuro, he muttered in shock. The sand around the puppet user was stained in a deep crimson, his eyes were closed shut and his breathing was weak. The Jinchuriki didn't know what he was feeling. It was as if something had been ripped out of his chest. He didn't like the feeling and would slaughter the ninja that hurt his brother, one of his precious people. I'll kill you, Gaara growled, demonic chakra leaking out of his body. Red Death narrowed her eyes, yet another source of demonic chakra, though this one was a lot less malevolent than the first. A Jinchuriki, she muttered with a frown underneath her mask. Jinchurikis were one of the few things she respected. Those with a demon sealed inside of their bodies were all treated the same and knew pain similar to her own. But this time was different. A Jinchuriki was her foe, and she wouldn't take it easy. She had seen what they were capable of, and underestimating them would be stupid. A violent wind gathered around Mayu's scythe, sharpening the blade and extending it. She watched sand cover half of Gaara's face, taking the shape of a demon. The Jinchuriki's eyes focused on the whirlpool ninja as more wind sharpened the blade of her scythe. Round 2 was about to begin. Naruto and Sasuke stared each other down, waiting for the other to make a move. The air was tense as they continued to glare at each other. The Uchiha's right hand suddenly twitched before performing a series of hand signs. The Jinchuriki gritted his teeth when he noticed that the hand signs were way too familiar. Wind style, devastation. Sasuke screamed as a gust of wind shot out of his mouth. Not wanting to be caught in the attack, the Chunin suddenly phased from the Uchiha's view. The attack wasn't as strong as his, but it was still enough to leave a mark. Sasuke's eyes widened, seeing an image of Naruto in front of him with his hand held back. The Uchiha quickly rolled to the side just as the blonde appeared before him and threw a punch. Purple chakra flared around him as he kicked off the sand and delivered a hard elbow to the Chunin's left ribcage. Naruto's eyes widened, pain shooting through his upper body before the distinct sound of cracking echoed through his ears. He suppressed a gasp as he was pushed away from the Uchiha before rolling with the blow and standing up. His hand gripped his side in pain, his ribs were probably broken. Sasuke smirked, enjoying the way the powerful chakra enveloped him. The chakra had given him strength, the strength to kill his brother and surpass all shinobi that stood on his way. He watched as Naruto glared at him. By the looks of things, he was still superior to the dead last. "You're weak, Naruto," Sasuke stated with a chuckle. Naruto's fists clenched in anger, much to the amusement of the Uchiha. "It looks like you haven't gotten any stronger since the Chunin exams. You really are pathetic." Naruto's fist clenched tighter as a smirk made its way to his face. "What's wrong, Sasuke?" he began in a taunting voice. "Did Itachi kick your ass so bad last time that you're trying to look strong now?" Sasuke's eyes widened before they glared into the blonde, a burning rage in his eyes. Blue and red chakra flared around the Jinchuriki as he leaned forward and ran through hand signs, extending both arms towards the Uchiha. "Well, I'm not going to feed your ego." "You're a fool, Naruto," Sasuke stated with his eyes closed and a smirk on his face. "I bet you won't even be able to lay a finger on M-Wind style." Gale palm, wind shot out of Naruto's palms, violently shooting through the sand before impacting against the Genin. Sasuke's eyes snapped open as the violent wind struck his stomach and pushed him back. The Uchiha tried to resist the current but was hurled through the air by the powerful wind. "Damn it," Sasuke cursed as he sailed through the air. He twisted his body and managed to land on the sand without much trouble. As soon as his feet touched the ground, he was forced to lean down, dodging a kick from the Jinchuriki. He took his chance and kicked off the sand with his elbow raised, aiming for his right ribcage. Naruto lowered his right arm to meet Sasuke's elbow. The Uchiha's attack met the blonde's arm with a loud crack, the Jinchuriki gritting his teeth in pain. Quickly spinning to the left, ignoring the pain shooting through his arm, the Jinchuriki took out a kunai before stabbing it into his opponent's right arm. Sasuke cried in pain, clutching his arm as blood poured down the wound before being kicked away by a foot to his chest. The Genin fell on the sand with a thud, pain shooting through his arm. "Fuck," the Uchiha cried out, tearing the kunai off his arm before his eyes widened, the Sharingan showing Naruto diving towards him. He quickly rolled away before standing up and finally jumping away from the area, watching as the blonde landed on the sand with a loud thud. Naruto frowned. It appeared that Sasuke wasn't finished fighting. He had hoped that wounding him would have ended the fight, but it looked like he had to knock him out after all. It would go against what he believed, but he couldn't afford to endanger the others just because the bastard wanted attention. "Damn," Sasuke panted, watching Naruto stand before him with a few wounds. His left fist clenched and his mouth turned into a snarl and his eyes glared into his teammate. "When the hell did he get so strong? Why is he stronger than me?" Black markings spread through the Genin's face. Purple chakra swirled around him as his eyes narrowed on the Chunin. He wouldn't let it end this way. The Chunin watched Sasuke with a cold look on his face. He watched as the purple chakra enveloped the wound on his arm and seemed to close it. "I can't drag this on." He spared a glance towards the direction of Gaara and Kankuro. There was a sudden spike of demonic chakra, and he knew that he was running out of time. He had to take Sasuke out as soon as possible. "I can't play around anymore." Blue and red chakra swirled around the blonde, enveloping him in a warm yet malevolent chakra. His wounds seemed to close under the warmth. "Shadow clone jutsu," he muttered, 2 clones appearing by his sides. The clones narrowed their eyes at Sasuke before turning back to the original Chunin, waiting for the command. Wind gathered on the blonde's palm, taking the shape of an orb. The wind compressed and seemed to shake on the Chunin's palm. Without time to spare, the 2 clones ran through hand signs before putting a hand to their mouth, pointing at the Uchiha. They were ready. Lighting gathered on Sasuke's right palm as he charged up his attack. His wound was a little bit better, and he was sure that it could handle a Chidori. By the looks of things, the blonde was about to attack, and he couldn't afford to waste time. "Didn't you know?" Naruto suddenly muttered. Sasuke furrowed his brows with a scowl on his face, not understanding what the blonde was talking about. "Wind beats lightning." Sasuke growled before shooting off towards Naruto. He noticed the clones, but he didn't care. He would make the blonde shut his mouth. He was nothing but a loser, and he couldn't compare to his power. The dead last had even mocked him about his attempt to take Itachi's life. He would end the life of the blonde if that's what it took to shut him up. Naruto's eyes settled on the floor as a sad scowl spread through his face. The clones next to him released the powerful winds, before dispelling. Sasuke had no idea that clones could use jutsu and could do nothing as the powerful twin winds crashed against his body. He sailed through the air before his eyes widened. The Chunin appeared before him with an orb of compressed wind on his right palm. Wind style, spiraling wind ball. Naruto cried as he brought down the attack on Sasuke's stomach. The Genin's eyes widened as blood splattered out of his mouth, before a wheezing breath escaped his throat. Sasuke was shot towards the sand before landing in a loud collision, kicking up a large cloud of dust. Naruto landed on the sand with a frown on his face. He had never meant it to go so far. The sand began to clear, giving him a better view of the area. His fists clenched when Sasuke staggered out of the cloud of sand with a hardened glare on his face, 3 tomos on his Sharingan. "This isn't over, Naruto," he cried as the markings on his face lit a bright red. Reaching into his kunai pouch, he took out a single and glared at the Chunin. "I'm going to beat you." Naruto closed his eyes and turned his back on the Uchiha. "I'm gonna go help Gaara and Kankuro," he announced with a loud sigh. Sasuke snarled, gritting his teeth in anger before breaking into a fit of coughs. "You're too weak to keep fighting. I'll make a clone to escort you back to the Sand Village where we'll suppress your chakra and send you back to the Leaf. As your superior, I see you as a threat to this mission. I'm not inferior to you." Sasuke glared at Naruto's retreating form. There had to be a way to beat him. He grit his teeth as he focused on the cursed seal, trying to draw power out, focusing on the chakra flow. A smirk graced his face when feeling the evil chakra inside of his body. There it was. The chakra that gave him strength. "I'm stronger than you, loser." The Chunin stopped dead on his tracks when he felt a sudden spike of evil chakra and heard the distinct sound of approaching steps. Almost instantly, as if by instinct, he took out Asuma's blade before turning around, swiping at whatever approached him. He felt the blade cut through flesh, blood spilling onto his hand, before he finally saw the blade cutting through Sasuke's right eye. "Sasuke!" Naruto immediately pulled away from the Uchiha, sealing his blade in the process. "Ag!" Sasuke screamed in agony as he brought 2 hands to his eye, blood pouring down his face. "Damn it," he flailed around in pain before feeling something slap against his chest. A wave of fatigue suddenly washed over him before falling to the sand, unconscious. Naruto quickly created 2 clones, having them take hold of the Genin. "Take him to the Sand Village immediately," he commanded with worry on his voice. "Find a medic and get him patched up." "You got it, boss," the clones replied before jumping away with the unconscious Shinobi. "What an idiot." Naruto sighed out. He couldn't believe how stupid Sasuke had been, endangering the mission and then charging at him like that. In the end, the thing to put him down had been a reflex and an exhaustion tag, created by the Toad Sage himself. He turned to the battle in the distance, a determined look on his face. He had people depending on him, and he wouldn't let himself feel guilty until they were safe. Not waiting another second, the Chunin sprinted down the desert, demonic chakra fading with each step, his eyes set on the path ahead. "Hang on, guys." The mercenary ran at the ninja with his sword on hand, his gaze set on the area around him, keen on not being caught off guard by another of their attacks. He watched as the blonde ninja brought her fan back and instantly knew that she was preparing another wind attack. He stopped dead on his tracks, watching as the fan was swung forward and released a blast of wind. A smirk made its way to his face as he jumped back a couple of feet, the wind crashing against the spot where he had just been before charging at the ninja at full speed. "Got you." By the looks of things, the blonde ninja could only attack with her fan. If he timed it right, like he just did, then he would be able to attack when she was the most vulnerable, right when she finished one of her powerful attacks. Temari frowned when the man charged at her in an unbelievable speed. She knew that she wouldn't be able to use another wind jutsu since the man would strike before she did, but she wasn't completely out of options. Once close enough, the mercenary swung at the ninja in an attempt to finish her life once and for all. His eyes widened when the ninja set the metallic fan in front of her in a flash, blocking the attack with a loud clang. His eyes narrowed before he jumped over the fan, gripping his word tightly as he brought it down on the kunoichi. Finally, he thought as his weapon cut through the ninja, but, much to his surprise, the kunoichi suddenly phased out of view. It was a clone, he thought in alarm as he gripped his sword with both hands and settled for a defensive stance. His eyes darted across the area. The dark-haired ninja stood on the sidelines with his arms crossed and a weary expression on his face. The mercenary knew that the dark-haired ninja wasn't done yet and wondered what he had planned, but couldn't linger much on it. He needed to take care of the immediate threat that was the blonde ninja that had disappeared in the middle of their fight. Where the hell did she go? He growled as the area around him disappeared into nothingness. The world around him was nothing but an endless abyss of darkness, with him being the only one in it. He took a step forward but crashed against an invisible force. His eyes widened as he raised a hand to touch the apparent wall in front of him. What the hell is this? His hand touched the hard surface of a rather solid object. He quickly turned around, using his hands to touch the area around him, but found that there were similar walls all around him. He was trapped within 4 invisible walls. What the fuck is this? Are you almost done, Shikamaru? Temari said through pants, her hands held in the tiger seal. Trickles of sweat ran down her face as she tried to keep the genjutsu in place. Though she knew how to use them, genjutsu was still difficult and took a great amount of chakra and concentration. Shikamaru nodded with a smirk on his face. I'm done, he stated with a tired look on his face. Using what remained of Naruto's improved explosive tags, he had managed to come up with something to take care of the mercenary. Though it was a little tricky, he was still glad with how it turned out. When you get him out of the genjutsu, I want you to raise a cloud of sand using your wind. Temari nodded as she released the genjutsu. The mercenary instantly fell to his knees, panting heavily with his eyes wide. The sand ninja took hold of her fan once more as she jumped in the air before swinging it towards the sand, creating a powerful gust of wind that impacted against it, kicking up a large cloud of sand that blocked everything from view. The mercenary got back to his feet with a look of fury on his face. Those ninja had caught him in a genjutsu when he had least expected it. Being a mercenary meant that he didn't have much training when it came to chakra, and because of this he was vulnerable to things like genjutsu. The cloud of dust began to clear. The mercenary instantly prepared to charge at the 2 ninja, but found that he couldn't move. Shadow possession success, Shikamaru muttered with a small smirk on his face. The mercenary's eyes widened as he struggled against the hold, but to no avail. Don't even try. As bothersome as it was, I trained my hold on the jutsu. Don't expect to break out anytime soon. The shadow user walked through the desert, the mercenary mimicking his moves. The Chunin stopped and set his hands into the ram seal, a scowl on his face. Temari stood next to him with a relieved look on her face, happy to know that the plan had worked. Wipe those looks off your faces, the mercenary smirked. Don't think for a second that you've won. You're finished, Shikamaru deadpanned with a frown on his face, his eyes cold. There's explosives all around you, which I'm about to detonate. I'm sure you know what that means. The mercenary's eyes widened as his teeth grit in anger. I will not be killed here, he roared in rage. I will kill you all. You haven't even seen an ounce of my power. I will not die here. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed on the man, his frown deepening. You already did, he calmly retorted as he activated the explosive tags around the man. Gaara glared at the opponent, staring at him as if mocking him. Kenkuro's fallen form lay on the crimson-tainted sand. The Jinchuriki punched at Red Death, his arm extending as it launched at the Whirlpool Ninja. The enemy ninja frowned underneath her mask as she raised her scythe to meet the blow, using the wind she had gathered to cut through the arm rather easily. The sand arm fell limply on the ground before gathering around the Jinchuriki once more. Don't disappoint me, Red Death stated with a grim look on her eyes. I plan on using some of my strength, so show me a good fight. I'll kill you, Gaara snarled as he charged at the ninja with a crazed look on his eyes. Red Death gathered chakra on her scythe, wind shaping up the blade as she waited for the Jinchuriki to get closer. By the looks of things, you can't seem to think straight at the moment, the whirlpool ninja stated. Gaara jumped in the air before throwing a punch at the enemy. Pity, you seem to have strength, but without control you're nothing. She raised the scythe to meet the blow. The sand arm dug into the blade before a slice of wind cut through it. Gaara's eyes widened as the wind cut through his arm before quickly moving away from the attack. The sand gathered on his arm hardened before falling to the ground, exposing his now bloodied left arm. He looked at his arm in terror. Never before had he been cut so easily. Just how powerful was Red Death? Sparks of electricity emitted from Red Death's scythe as her eyes glared at the sand Jinchuriki. He had let emotions cloud his judgment, and that had been his downfall. She no longer found herself caring about the abilities he displayed. His easily influenced mind had been a disappointment. Die, she muttered with a frown as she pointed the scythe at the Jinchuriki. A lightning bolt shot out of the scythe, ripping through the air as it headed straight for Gaara. The redhead's eyes widened as he tried to dodge the attack but found himself unable to move. It was probably the same jutsu Red Death had used on the others during their first fight. For some reason he couldn't move his body. His eyes settled on the fallen form of his brother, his breathing weak. I'm sorry, Kankuro. A figure suddenly jumped in front of Gaara, violent blue chakra flaring around him. A blue orb of chakra gathered on his hand before he slammed it at the lightning bolt. Rasengan! Naruto cried. The two attacks pushed against one another before the lightning bolt gave out in a small explosion. Red Death watched the figure with a hint of disappointment on her eyes. Naruto stood before Red Death with a frown on his face. His eyes held black slits as blue chakra with hints of red flared around him. Are you all right, Gaara? He asked with his eyes set on Red Death. I am fine, Gaara stated as sand gathered around his left arm once again. He found that whatever had been holding him was now gone and quickly moved next to the blonde with a tired look on his face. We need to get Kankuro some help. Right, Naruto nodded. His chakra swirled around him as he glared at Red Death. I'll keep her busy, you take Kankuro to a medic. Gaara frowned. I will get him help, but I'm coming back as soon as possible. He walked towards Kankuro's fallen form, keeping an eye on Red Death in case she decided to attack. They made you a Jinchuriki, Red Death stated in a firm tone. Naruto frowned. I don't see how that's any of your business. He flared the chakra around him, ignoring the burning feeling on his skin, but I'll take you down right now. Meanwhile, Gaara took hold of Kankuro, throwing Naruto a glance before running away from the area. He had to get his brother help. He was losing a lot of blood and would die if left unattended. I don't get it. Red Death muttered as she reached for her mask, taking it off her face. Mayu grit her teeth in anger, not understanding why Naruto fought for Konoha. You're a Jinchuriki. All of them are treated the same way, as outcasts. They're alone from the minute they're born, with everyone hating them. How can you just stand there protecting the leaf? Protecting those who have hurt you. I'm not protecting them. Naruto's eyes hardened on the ninja. I'm protecting the people who see me as their friend. You're right, I was hated in my village for a reason I didn't know, and I hated them back. His eyes flashed red, malevolent chakra swirling around him, memories flashing before his eyes. I wanted to rip them to shreds. Take everything away from them and kill them like they deserved. Then why didn't you? Mayu asked with a frown. You could. No, you can do that if you join me. We'll destroy Konoha together. Naruto's eyes lost their crimson color, returning to their usual blue. The malevolent chakra around him died down. I will never do that, he answered with a glare. Konoha is the home of the people who saw me for who I am. They saved me from myself. They saved me from a path of hatred, and I will always be grateful to them. I couldn't care less about the villagers, but when you threaten my friends, I'll kill you without a second thought. Very well, Red Death said as she put her mask back on. A violent blue chakra swirled around her, kicking up sand that covered the area. Naruto shielded his eyes, gritting his teeth. The whirlpool ninja activated a seal on her scythe, enveloping it in a bright light. The Chunin watched as the light separated into two red-bladed katanas with black handles. If I can't convince you, then you're my enemy. Red Death roared in rage as more blue chakra flared around her. I'll kill you, Konoha Shinobi. I'm not gonna be able to beat her, Naruto concluded as he watched the chakra swirl around the whirlpool ninja. All he could do at the moment was stall long enough until Gaara got back. I have to do this. Boom. An explosion suddenly roared in the distance, taking the blonde by surprise. Don't lose focus for a single second, a voice muttered on his ear. The Chunin quickly turned his head to see Red Death behind him with one of the katanas raised. He quickly summoned Asuma's blade and prepared to parry the attack, but was taken back when she suddenly phased from view. With the dash, Naruto was cut off by a knee clashing against his stomach. His eyes widened as he spat blood, all air leaving his body as a shaky scream of pain escaped his mouth. Red Death stood before him with a hardened glare before kicking at the blonde, making contact with his left ribcage with a loud cracking noise. Naruto let out a scream of pain as he sailed through the air. It seemed as his ribcage hadn't been as healed as he had thought. He raised his head to see Red Death already running after him with the two swords held back. Damn it! Naruto muttered as he ran through hand signs before raising a hand. Wind style, wind wave, a shot of wind shot out of the blonde's hand. Red Death raised a katana, absorbing the chakra without much trouble, to the dismay of the blonde. The whirlpool ninja proceeded to jump in the air and point the other blade at the blonde, shooting a yellow blast of chakra. The blast of chakra made contacts with the blonde's stomach, launching him towards the ground. The blonde Chunin cried in pain as his body impacted against the sand, his whole body going numb from the impact. What a pity, Red Death stated with a hint of sadness. It looks like I'll be helping the other villages in killing another Uzumaki. Naruto could only watch as Red Death approached him. His body refused to move and his chakra was close to nothing at the moment. It seemed as if he only had one choice. He had to use the fox's chakra directly, something he hated doing. He had tamed a tiny fraction of the power, but doing so had only introduced him to a whole new level of the fox's chakra. It looks like I have no choice, he stated as Red Death grew closer. His eyes closed as he focused on the source of almost infinite power sealed within him. Easily finding the malevolent chakra, he began to draw from it. He didn't have enough chakra to level it like Jiraiya had told him, but it was his only way. He would do anything to protect his friends. Red chakra erupted from the almost broken body of Naruto, covering everything in a red glow. Red Death stopped dead on her tracks, watching the malevolent chakra fill the area. She watched as the chakra gathered around the blonde, swallowing him whole. Naruto opened his crimson eyes and set them on Red Death. His first instinct telling him to kill her in the cruelest way possible, he didn't find it to be a bad idea. The Chunin got on all fours as he growled at his opponent. No matter how strong she was, he would make sure to kill her. Is this? Red Death muttered in disbelief as she watched the chakra take form around the blonde. Two red chakra ears formed above his head, clawed paws formed over his feet and hands, and a single red chakra tail sprouted from his back. The Kyuubi? Her response was a roar.
That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.